So to become qualified as a QS, first of all, you need to have a quantity surveying degree. I say that depends on which route, actually. So you need a degree depending on which route you go on. But if you want to become a chartered surveyor, so if you want to go down the professional route, so I'll complicate it even further. There's two ways.
A QS. So you've got the chartered option.
You've got chartered option, which is professional, you're a consultant. It's so much about cash flow, right? So even though, you know, it's coming, it's not quite there, and this is why people trip over. So I think in terms of trying to make it fair, there's things like fluctuations. I know you don't like that word.
I think the reality is, for me, you have to adapt to the market that you're working in. Welcome back to a brand new episode of the Property by Kazy Podcast. Each and every week we are joined by an amazing guest, and this week is exactly the same. We've got Ayo. How you doing, brother?
I'm well, bro. Good.
I know we've been talking, and you've been moving, you've been transitioning in the space. So you are a QS.
I am.
We love an acronym, but what does QS actually mean?
So it means quantity surveyor, also known as cost manager, cost consultant. But yeah, effectively, there's many specialisms, and I'm a chartered surveyor. Okay. So there's probably about 23 different pathways.
Hold on, before we get into the rest of the podcast, a quick note from our sponsors, London Mortgage Solutions, our tried, tested and recommended property finance brokerage. Whether you're looking for bridging finance, buy-to-let mortgages or commercial mortgages, these guys have got it all covered and will give you great advice. They can also arrange both residential and life insurance. They've helped myself as well as many of my listeners already. So if you want to find out how they can help you, click the link in the description below.
Hence why
we're about to get technical today. When you're starting with this 23 different pathways, this is not the one for your property developer that, you know, just doesn't want to know stuff. And I think one of the reasons why I get people like yourself, people like Alex, the accountants on, is that, you know, property development is great. It looks great on Instagram, before and afters. But when you get down to really wanting to make money, not being just a property investor, but a property developer, you kind of have to understand a bit more of the specialities and understand where you have to instruct the correct people in the right areas.
Correct.
So you're going to give us those intricacies, those details today.
Yeah, I hope to shed light. And you know what? We talked about quantity surveyor, but you'd be surprised how many people just don't know what that is. I mean, even within the industry, within property, right? So,
and I think it's at the level because, you know, we get into property, a lot of people as maybe accidental investors or accidental landlords, i.e. that you had a property, your partner has a property, you meet each other, you move in together, now you've got an investment. But then you realize, you know what, maybe I'm gonna turn it into a HMO, maybe I'm gonna loft conversion, extension. You see the way that adds value and you sort of snowball from there. So you learn very much on the fly as opposed to on purpose. Correct.
And there's principles, there's things, you know, you might not always want to appoint a QS, you know, the project might not be big enough, a quantity surveyor. But hopefully today I can shed on some areas that you need to maybe look at.
So let's take it back to the beginning, because we always talk about how people could potentially get into property. And a QS and being a specialist in your field is obviously one of those ways. So what does it take to become qualified as a QS?
So to become qualified as a QS, first of all, you need to have a quantity surveying degree. I say that depends on which route, actually. So you need a degree depending on which route you go on. But if you want to become a chartered surveyor, so if you want to go down the professional route, so I'll complicate it even further. There's two ways. A QS.
So you've got the chartered option.
You've got a chartered option, which is professional. You're a consultant. You advise clients on developments, and then the other side is on the contractor side. So you're a contractor's QS. You're a commercial manager, effectively, and you will buy and sell. So you'll procure packages. You'll procure the work on behalf of the contractor.
When you say procure packages,
so buy work. So you'd go out for the window package, you go out for the flooring, and you'll go out to different contractors or subcontractors or subbies, or even go out and buy the materials yourself, depending on
the scale and the size.
And the scale. So there's two routes. You either want to become a professional. The reason I say professional is because our clients will appoint me to help them very early on. So, you know, they've got an architect on board, set their budget, and I'll work with the architect, developing the design all alongside the budget. it's only at that point when we're going out to the market, when we're going out to tenders to find contractors that are going to do the work, is when the contractor side QS now activates, right? So now they're aware of the opportunity and they will go take the tender information that I've given to them, and they'll go out to the different packages. So no, I'm even no way, no other way, but with property by Kazy going straight in. To the deal.
You gotta go deep that, because that's, I think the conversations are important. It's great to have a conversation about I bought a house for this much, I sold it for this much, I got some land, I got the planning, but then the intricacies of the detail are what determine whether or not you can actually make money. And setting it up right, because I've seen many projects go off plan because it wasn't set up right. And I always say, if you set up the project right and take the time to, you'll save problems and time in the build. So how do you set it right? We'll go into it in a bit more detail, but I'm talking about ensuring you have, say, a clear design. You know exactly what it is that you want to build, and when you go out to the market and you're going out to price it, you've got certainty on what you're trying to do. I've had it many times, and there's reasons why you can't always be at that position. Sometimes you're running and you're trying to get something completed by a certain time, but it's really important to have that certainty. And big amount of costs on projects is change. Yeah.
So people changing their mind halfway through. You've already built the wall, now you've got to knock that wall. The contractor's not quite priced to be able to do it.
I'm a changer. I like to adapt to, and for builders, obviously it doesn't always. It's not the best. Yeah. But obviously, generally speaking, I'm either changing because it significantly improves the design or significantly adds value.
Okay.
So if you're thinking of the scale of the stuff that we generally do, sort of less than 9 units, getting 2 1-beds to 2 beds, that additional bedroom can add an extra sort of 30, 40, 50,000 pounds. Exactly. That can be worth it. But it's just understanding the value. So in terms of the role of a QS, is to obviously, there's 2 parts. When you're the build, there's effectively your labor cost, material cost, and professional, and and the third, the professional fees alongside it. But labor and materials make up the bulk of it. So sort of a lot of the time, what would you say the sort of percentage split is between the two of those?
So it varies on the trade. So I mean, you look at stuff like when I look at a cost plan and what I'm doing, the first is your kind of facilitating work, so the work you need to do to prepare. So you're stripping out a building, you're demolishing. Some of those are just labor costs, right? So literally all you're doing is knocking down walls, etc. And then you could be, let's say bricklaying, for example. Again, it depends on the type of brick you go for and the higher quality
big difference in bricks.
Exactly. So depending on what you go on, but it varies. I mean, it can be up to 60-40 on some trades. It can be 70-30, but understanding that split is key, especially in markets like now where you got fluctuation in prices, material as well as
I like that we use the word fluctuation, because I think we use the word fluctuation very optimistically, because fluctuation implies up and down, whereas at the moment it's just basically price increases. I think is a more honest way of describing the market at the moment. I have not seen much fluctuation. I've seen lots of increases.
Yeah, you're right.
But we're hoping, obviously, with the at a certain point we will enter a kind of market equilibrium and some stability where prices that you can see the direct impact because of trade, because of social issues, like when it comes to timber and steel. It is. So how are you, particularly as somebody whose job it is to obviously deal with the pricing, how do you manage and mitigate the drastic price increases we've been facing?
That's a fantastic question. I mean, it's the number one question that a lot of my clients are asking. I must say, I mean, I've been in the industry 15 years, right? 15 years, and I've never known a time like the last kind of 2 years.
Yeah, before you get into how you actually manage it, I think for some people, they're just not aware of what's going on in the material space. So can you give some examples, sort of 2022, what's happened to certain materials, the sort of percentages that you've seen?
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about steelwork increasing 25% and being warned of further increases. And we're talking about, there's some buildings which are the structural frame. The whole frame is still.
whole thing's still.
So you can understand that impact. Even on the MEP, and when I talk about some mechanical, electrical, and plumbing, you know, all of those elements. Again, increasing up to 10%, 25%, and that's this year. If you look at, if you actually looked at it, you've got up to 45% increases. Scaffolding, which near enough every project needs. Varying reasons for that. You know, you've got the whole labour shortages. Plus, also we've all heard about the cladding works that are happening. So there's an increased, you know,
supply and demand.
Supply and demand is
if at the end of the day, I'm looking at it and I'm like, look, every scaffolder's busy. It comes a point where, all right, the prices have to go up because I can't do everything. If I can't do all the jobs, prices go up. You take them. So those are examples of increases. And even on a day-to-day basis, like, you know, if you're thinking about it, that, but you're talking about big steel frames for these massive buildings and I'm not as impacted. We can talk about a bit of maybe a sheet of marine ply that previously, you know, you're talking, how much for a sheet of marine?
Timber's a strong one. When you look at the timber increases that have happened, and again, everyone, even you might think you was looking at steel, you know, and even if you're opening up a floor plate and having to put steels in, you know, in replacement of, you know, structural walls, again, you might be budgeting 4 or 5 grand, but then again, it can have a material impact. When you look at that 25% on a smaller budget, it's
massive. And to be honest, even though the actual price is a 25% increase, because everybody's so busy and because these products are also under high demand, when you're working at a micro level in the smaller projects, you'll generally find that you actually get more of an increase in price. Because you know, there's big projects, there's big margins to be made.
The scale and you know, we're just talking about labour. Sorry, about materials. Like labour's also gone up. So when you add the compound impact of that, you know, it's a real challenging time.
So then back to my other question, what type of contracts have you used? How do you mitigate that risk or that price rises when working with clients to make it fair for both parties? What things have been implemented over?
It's interesting you say fair for both parties, right? Because I feel like clients have had the best of both worlds in that, you know, and I'm talking about my more experienced clients, right? So ones where you'd enter into a contract with a main contractor, it'll be a fixed price. So usually you go in, these are my drawings, this is what I want, this is how much it's going to cost me, and you're near enough tied in. There's a lot of security. You transfer a lot of the risk to the contractor, and for years that's been the kind of name of the game.
Standardized.
If there's issues, it's the contractor to pick up. They've got to procure in time. I think what we're seeing now is contractors are just not able to abide or work under those conditions. I'm finding tenders that, you know, you normally had loads of demand for, you know, single stage lump sum contracts. Contractors are refusing them just because the
What does
risk
that mean?
is too
Sorry,
high.
the single stage lump sum contract.
The single stage is you go out once, you've got a set of information, you go to a contractor, give me your one price, you know, and it's lump sum. So therefore, everything's included, you know.
One more question, tenders as well, because that's an...
Okay, and then tenders is it's the set of information that you issue to a contractor to price. So it will have a pricing schedule for them to return. It will have the drawings. It will have the contract amendments. And when I say drawings, the architectural drawings, the engineering drawings, and then any information they need to know.
So effectively, when you're tendering, what you're doing is saying, look, here is all the information for the project.
Correct.
Everything that you would need to work out the price, you come back and give me the price, and you send that out to multiple.
And I'll send it to multiple. So typically 3 or 4. Sometimes it can be up to 5. But to answer your question, what we're trying to do in terms of trying to make it a bit more of a fairer playing ground, because at the end of the day, it's interesting you say that. I've had in the last 6 months 2 reputable, family-owned kind of reputable contractors go bust, right? And it's not you know, quality that they do, and the construction industry, the contracting industry, it's so much about cash flow, right? So even though, you know, it's coming, it's not quite there, and this is why people trip over. So I think in terms of trying to make it fair, there's things like fluctuations. I know you don't like that word.
I think the reality is, for me, you have to adapt to the market that you're working in. And if you're not willing to take an element of like, everything is about risk and reward and investment. If you're not willing to take an element of the risk and therefore be rewarded with a fairer price, if you want to have a low risk quote, you should be happy to take a much higher price day one. And I think that's really the conversation of where we are, that if I'm going to offer, if I was the contractor and offer somebody a fixed price, I need to make sure that I'm not going to make a loss on all of these products.
And when we talk about pricing, risk is is the biggest factor, right? When I talk about a lump sum contract, the contractor has to take on the responsibility for the whole project, you know, sometimes for design, you know, for finishing off the design and building. The risk profile of the project means the contractor will price that into their price. So when, you know, clients are trying to beat down a particular cost, you know, you've looked at it, you've got 1.1 million, you've got 1.2, and you've got 900,000. This is where, you know, we really come into our element, you know, because we're able to fully assess, highlight the risks to you as a client, because the lowest price, as we were talking earlier, is not always the best price.
Exactly.
And it's just really understanding that risk profile, because you go for the lowest price, what happens is you tend to have a fight all the way through. The contractor needs to make a profit. Any change, we talked about change, change happens a lot. Any change you make, again, it's really hard because the contractors kind of got you over a barrel, and that's where a lot of contractors will come in really low, but ultimately make their money as they go through, because every change is inflated as prices. And without a QS, without a competent QS, it's very, very difficult for you to finish that.
And I advise people of that on, like, literally, like, down to tidy up of a house, like, you know, new kitchen, new bathroom, flooring, some painting. And the same thing is said, you know, when you're doing that versus when you're doing, you know, tens, £100 million developments, that generally the lowest price, you know, there's going to be no wiggle room. So something changes, there's going to be a lot, well, you've now got to add this. But I think it is important, and that's one of the reasons why, as you grow, the important to instruct a QS, because the reality is, unless you have a great understanding yourself, how do you benchmark 3 different prices against each other?
And that's, I guess that's the strength of the QS. We've seen many projects, worked on many projects. We've got a lot of benchmark data, so we know if things are out of kilt. And also, there's always a reason why. So understanding the reason why. Also, we'll vet. So a lot of the work we'll do before we even recommend a contractor, we'll do a pre-qualification. So that would be going out to the contractors, finding out, for example, similar projects that they've done before. We'll even walk around with the client and show them what they've done. Look at their financial records as well, which is key in a market.
Finances, I think, something that when people talk about builders, because a lot of the time, you know, they have to be cash buoyant to be able to fund the project, to meet the increment payments. Understanding their financials, I think, is the thing a lot of people miss.
It's key. What other projects have they got on as well at the right time? We hear horror stories of contractor being paid here, using that money over there, and then using that money to there. And as a contractor, you do have to juggle. You know, it's very difficult. So just really having that understanding, and then you know, advising clients. So I've had clients previously who have never wanted to pay an advance payment, for example. So the contractor's saying, you know, where there's long lead items, you know, another issue in the market over the last kind of 2 years is increased lead times, you know, due to, you know, supply and demand. So therefore, in order to get this in time, there's always program. You know, when I think about construction and a QS, you know, we're really looking at time, cost, quality, you know, and the risk surrounding kind of all 3. So therefore, I'm always looking at it from that perspective, and as is the contractor. So when time is of the essence, ultimately your cost generally goes up. When you've got time and quality, that kind of needs to be adhered to. Cost definitely really impacts. So therefore, contractors or clients in the past who have really been against paying advance payments, obviously the risk, you pay up, you know, the contract's £1 million and they're asking that they want 300,000 day one, you know, because, you know, you're placing a window order.
And the other side of it is, you know, in a lot of industries, you know, that's, you know, if you go to order food, you order your food, you eat it, you're happy with it, you pay. So people are very much used to that. But at the same time, you know, I heard you hear the builders say, well, why am I funding your project? Because I'm not your financer. Like,
and that's why I say the contract is so important, right? I'm advising a client at the minute, and it's really unfortunate. It's everything you mentioned earlier, you know, just doing some works. You know, the works increased, you know, it was actually an insurance job. So therefore it was getting paid for as reinstatement. But then, you know, he added other things that he wanted to the project as well. And therefore, because it was on a cost plus basis. So, you know, it was the contractor would just do the work, and whatever it cost him, they'll just pay overheads and profit on top, and that was it. Obviously, as an insurance job, that works because the money's coming straight back from the insurer, and it works. When they are now using their own monies, you don't want that. You want certainty. You want a fixed price, because in that arrangement, the contractor's not really having to work as diligently. You know, it doesn't matter if it takes them a bit longer. Where it's a fixed price, the contractor's margin is how quick can they deliver it, and how efficiently can they deliver. So it depends on that contractual arrangement, and that's why a contract will stipulate payment terms. So, you know, the amount of people that will come in, a guy would do come around, give you a quote, and just give you invoices willy-nilly. I feel like with a contract, you have a set agreement on both sides, so you know what payments need to be made. You've got an idea of the cash flow forecast of, you know, so you can budget yourself, you know, how much money you need each month, each week, depending on the agreement.
No, I think that's it. I think that the contract is probably one of the most important parts, because it outlines your expectations from what's my expectation as a client, what's my expectation as a contractor, and if there's a dispute, we refer back to the contract.
Disputes, perfect.
We'll get to disputes. Before we get to disputes, I wanted to ask you something that's come up recently.
Okay.
It's come up recently on my feed quite a lot, and in discussions, particularly because of material prices and how they're moving. And it was the tender process. You mentioned sort of 4 or 5 people to tender. Now, typically, people are tendering for free on the basis that they're going to get the work, but there's more conversations now around, you know, a fee to tender because of the time it takes to deliver it. What would you think about that?
I've not seen that yet. I'd be very much, I wouldn't really entertain that. I don't think we're quite there yet.
I think, do you know what, maybe it's the scale that because at a more micro scale, you know, a lot of people are saying, look, because builders are so busy, I'll come out, I'll give you, you know, a detailed quotation or tender. However, this is the amount the quote costs. If you proceed, then it's deductible. If not, then that's the cost, because
it's like a call-out charge, isn't it?
Yeah, but the reality is that if, for example, because at the moment prices are so volatile, and you want that certainty. If I come out and someone says, "Oh, can you know how much to do this? You know, this conversion, for example," I could give you a ballpark figure of what it would cost, and it would still make a good margin for the team. And that would take me, you know, I can do that in 10 minutes. If you want me to sit down, if my hourly rate is X, and even though it depends, like the reality is that the reason I say it is because for me to take the time to do it, because of the number of them that you do, that if you're doing it correctly and you're not coming in at the lowest price and you want to kind of work with integrity, by the time
it costs money.
By the time you do sort of 5-10 of those, you know, that's the margins for doing, you know, a job at some point if you take your hourly time into account.
Brand new series with myself, Kaz from Property by Kazy, bringing together some of the best developers and development projects across the UK.
This is probably my favourite flat because of the challenges.
This property was purchased for approximately 980,000.
So we're now in the hallway of flat number 9.
We should be generating £4,250 per calendar month.
Yeah, we did a full rewire, full replumb, the boiler's over your shoulder, all the copper was gone.
You've got the flip deals, BRRR, ground up construction, new build houses, conversions, office to residential, you name it, we're gonna go and see it. So if you wanna see some of the best developments in the UK, subscribe right now.
Okay, so we've spoken a lot about the details of what your actual role's like. And before we get into, I want to ask you some questions about your day-to-day and favourite projects you've worked on. But let's take it back a second. So you said obviously you have to qualify, get a degree. You know, what skills do you think make a good QS? Like if you're young, sort of 16, you know, thinking maybe even younger than that, like what should people be thinking about studying to prepare them for that vocation?
So, yeah, good question. There's a number of skills. I think You had Adewale on earlier. He was talking about a BTEC. I think he did. There's also HNDs, but I think obviously a maths. A lot of what I do is number. It's a numbers game, right? So anything to do with maths is good. What I do like about the HND or the BTEC that Adewale did is it gives you a really good grounding from early on across
you're doing a property metaphor foundation. I see what you did there.
However, in terms of skill set, I say analytical. You know, being able to challenge. A lot of what we do is understanding trends, understanding what's happening, understanding the impact, and being aware of current affairs and how current affairs affects construction prices, supply and demand that we've been talking about for particular products. So, whether you work in residential, when you eventually become a QS, your success will be how you understand that market, how you understand the nuances in that market. We talk about residential. There's build to rent. There's affordable housing. There's a whole plethora. But understanding, like I say, maybe current affairs plus also analytics, because data is going to have such a big
numbers, the current affairs, and the analytics is some
analytics. So for me, I think data is the key, right? So data is going to change a lot of what we're doing right now.
They say that in a lot of fields, because even when they talk about A&Rs in music, they used to have to go out there and understand everything. Now you just run the numbers, and
soon it will be. There's so much data. Those that can analyse best are the ones that are going to be kind of rising to the top. That's what I look for.
So data analysts potentially could be a good way to pivot into that. Okay, so that's kind of the skills that you need to. We're going to ask you some quick fire questions now. So let's say, what has been the favourite project you've worked on? What type of project was it? Let's give us some snapshot of that project.
The obvious go-to is probably the Google building that's going up right now in King's Cross.
Nice.
Biggest, probably most well known, but I'd use the Meta project, which is in King's Cross. So Meta have just moved into it. It's about a 182 million, 200 million pound project, and for me it was the biggest project that I was kind of given responsibility on. So that one's a commercial office building, massive atrium. We're talking about nearly 500,000 square foot.
Oh wow!
Yeah, so
that must look nice.
Yeah.
Must look nice. If only my videographer was listening and could just put a shot of that building in right now, that would be fantastic.
Yeah.
And that's why we use South Point Media. But, okay, so that's your favourite one, and also, ironically, the next question was going to be the biggest one, but that was also the biggest in terms of value.
The biggest in value was the King's Cross.
King's Cross one.
King's
okay.
Cross. And then more recently, again, my more recent experience has been in commercial is one that I've just completed on Southwark Bridge.
Nice. And then in terms of learning curve lessons, what would you say, like maybe a mistake you made along the way, like something that you learnt from? To give advice for somebody.
I think we need to do a part 2 on that. I've made loads of mistakes.
Okay,
right,
maybe just give me a little, because you don't even have to give me the detail, just tell me snapshot what they were.
So I think, after getting chartered, so, you go through your professional exams, kind of thinking that...
How long did that take, by the way?
So it takes 2 years.
2 years.
So most people will enter into structured training for 24 months. After that, you can sit your final examination. Nice. But I think it was then where I was doing a lot of affordable housing, and I felt like I kind of knew a lot. You get the badge,
you got comfortable, you got the qualification,
and I got a real eye opener shortly after that actually, and that's kind of stayed with me, humbled me. And just stay learning. That you never know enough. I say I'm 15 in. There's still so much that I've got to learn. So being a student to the game, I say.
I think, and that's the thing. That is a common theme that you have to just stay learning and stay hungry, because things are always changing. We work in adaptive markets, so the ability to not get too comfortable, I think, is a real skill that can further you in any area. So that's then you obviously working with some big companies doing these massive projects, and you've now branched out and you're now doing your own thing. Yeah, you sort of pivoted in that regard. So you've got Chorus.
Yeah, so Chorus is a company.
Their details are going to be below if you are looking, for a QS or looking for someone to instruct. But how's that been going? Yeah, it's been. I'm not sure when this is going out, but currently it's been about 6 weeks. Okay, so still very new. You're
still very new.
Green.
I left. I was kind of leading a cost management team in one of the largest real estate firms for the last kind of 5 years, and this was a real change in terms of business. But it's amazing in terms of the autonomy. I'm out there, it's building something up, you know, from the ground. So, you know, it started with just me in London. The team's beginning to grow.
Nice.
Again, clients are reaching out, and the seeds have been planted.
Well, I know we're in conversation at the moment about you helping one of our projects that we're looking to start with very soon. So excited to see that. Excited to see your involvement in that. I was going to ask, before we talk more about you going into being, you know, setting up your own company and being self-employed and having your own business, you know, the value of what you learn over your 15 years.
Okay.
Because, you know, you hear a lot of conversations about everybody wants to be their own boss all the time.
Yeah.
But why did you choose to work with somebody else for that period of time? What was it for you?
So when I got into my first degree was in computer science. So I was a non-cognate, i.e., you know, not a relevant qualification or degree. So I did a postgrad, and I knew nothing. Like, I didn't even know. Like, I was learning about the different types of stretcher bond, the way that bricks are being laid. I knew nothing. So therefore, it just enabled me. Shout out to my boy Adewale, who I know touched on this topic in detail in a previous podcast. But it gives you an ability to learn on someone else's dime.
That's it.
And also the opportunities that are given. So, you know, now I'm set up, I'm not going to get the opportunity. King's Cross ain't just going to fall on my lap right now. So it gives me the opportunity to go out and learn my trade. You know, we're still making mistakes, learning from the mistakes that are made and progressing.
I think
really.
for me, a lot of the time, it's the credibility as well, because if you've just started, you said you're not going to get the Facebook job, the Google job, or the Meta job now. You know, you're not going to get that £200 million job fall on your lap as an individual.
No.
But you are going to be able to get, you know, smaller jobs, but still massive jobs in comparison to what other people have got on the basis of your experience working within a team and delivering those projects.
And it's also the confidence that it gave me, right? So like I say, I've been in the game for a long time, but over time, you know, I've worked in, you know, residential, affordable housing, all the way through to private housing. I've done commercial, I've done industrial. So, you know, over time, confidence comes, and the confidence to go out there on your own. Don't get me wrong, it's still nerve-wracking to a certain extent, but it's good in terms of the arrangement that I've now got, where I'm a part owner in the business, and, you know, I've got a team. You know, there's about 30 of us in Chorus that I can still bounce things off, and I've got the benefits of a wider business while still trying to grow the presence in London. So
yeah, no, I'm excited. I think, you know, you mentioned when you were talking about some of the reputable, you know, big building firms that have been, you know, around for ages, family businesses that unfortunately weren't able to stand the test of time. And it's because of maybe the odd mistake. But, you know, learning those mistakes and making those mistakes elsewhere, and then, like I said, coming with the confidence to do your own thing is a massive benefit as well.
It's massive. And listen, there's loads of guys before me who've had years of experience. So you're learning off other people. And I feel people, when I first started in my industry, I was just happy. You know, I came in 2007, and I didn't really know where I was going, what I was doing. I was just grateful that someone gave me a job, right? And what I learned as I went through was actually, guess what? You're also bringing a lot to the table, and therefore I started to actually interview the other way around. So I was going to interview, I was asking them questions. I had set questions because of bad experiences that I had. So I think as you go through, you learn that actually you have benefit, and you choose. You know, I looked at people that motivated me, inspired me, and I went to work in those teams. They had the relationships with Google, they had the relationship with the Metas, and I learned the best of what I could as I've gone through.
And I think that for people that are, you know, going through their personal progression, I think that's something that I haven't actually heard of or thought of enough. But you know, in terms of when you're looking to move role, it's not always money dependent, because the benefit of the 9 to 5, like I mentioned, is that somebody else is paying you to learn, and what you can take from that job. It's not just about the money, it's about the experience, the connections, and all of these things that if you do want to go out on your own at some point, are going to further your personal growth.
And don't forget, as you're even doing all of that, your reputation's grown. You know, now thanks to social media, bro, you've grown an amazing brand. But you're already doing that. In the first, you know, the industry's so small. even on the bigger projects, that people that I worked with on my first project, I now know, you know, and I'm seeing them come around again. So you're already doing that. And whilst you say making mistakes, I think the most things, like, we all make mistakes. It's the learning that comes out of it. As an industry, we're making mistakes.
How you transform that mistake into something. So.
I mean, it's funny because clients want to know that. A lot of the time it's, you know, you go to bid for work and no one wants to, it all went rosy, it all went smooth, you know.
Because they know that's not realistic.
And that's not realistic in our field. Because in our field, like, how many projects finish on time? How many finish on budget, right? And that's what we're kind of judged.
I still owe him a full tank of petrol for betting him that I'd finish a little refurb in 2 weeks, and it took 2 weeks and 5 days. And
there you go.
Petrol prices now, he still wants a full tank. Can you imagine?
Keep that favour.
Yeah.
So it's those lessons that I learned, and that's self-reflection, and that's what's helped me, you know, especially now. You know, you're never as great as you think you are, you know, you're never as bad as you think you are. It's finding that balance, but most important is the ability to self-reflect and know what your strengths and weaknesses are.
I think that's good. I think that's a good way we could potentially round up that self-reflection and being able to do personal analysis. Yeah. That personal SWOT is definitely loads of good advice for a lot of people that are looking, not just to get into your field, because I think the conversation we've had today from just a business perspective would be really beneficial to a lot of people. You know, for people that want to engage with you, network with you, or employ your services, where can they find you?
So you can find us with the Chorus Group, chorusgroup.com. I'm on Instagram, so I'm Ayo Ajayi QS. You find me on Instagram, and I'm on LinkedIn as well. So all the usual platforms.
Yeah, well, we're gonna get, you know, I mean, you're gonna forward your links. They're gonna make sure everything is in the description so people can find and link up with you and connect with you. Before we let anybody go, we always ask them this one question. Somebody that wants to get into property, you know, maybe don't know exactly what they want to do in property, don't have that much information, where would you advise they start?
So I say do a research, have a look at the RICS website. It shows, I mentioned 23 pathways, it will mention all of them there. I mean, I believe that no matter what you want to do, no matter what your skill set is, there's something for you to do in property. So do your research, find out people like myself, they ask questions. There's the RIBA, there's the RICS. So RIBA is architecture, RICS is surveyors. You've got the ICE, which is engineers. So you go to those governing bodies and find out information there, and do your research. There's loads of platforms now which are talking about property, but first of all, I think, especially if you're looking to get in right at the outset, it's looking at what courses you can do. And I'm really glad that, you know, I've gone into a number of universities through my whole career. I've gone into schools and talking to students, and I feel like career advisors are very much more now aware, as opposed to when I was getting into it. No one really knew about construction. So that's how and if anyone's got any questions, I'm pleased to
definitely. I mean, whether it's in the comment section, whether you reach out to him directly or you reach out to me, I'm sure I can put people in touch. If someone's, you know, that's the thing, that we're growing a community of people that are able to have conversations. I'm not saying everybody's got all the time in the world, but a brief conversation to be like, look, this is maybe something I'm thinking about going into, and I'll have this specific question. I'm sure you'll be able to help answer that. If you've enjoyed this video, make sure you like it, all of the usual good stuff. If you haven't subscribed yet, I don't know what you're doing. I know we're like a little bit away from 6,000. Maybe by this time this comes out, we're more, but help us drive on, help us push this conversation forward so people can actually enjoy and hopefully learn and develop their skill set in property. Anything to say? We're going to sign off?
No, sign off, no. All I'll say is, listen, it's a great industry. If you've not really thought about surveying, and specifically cost management, quantity surveying, I'd definitely say look it up. Hopefully I've done it justice and made you consider it.
You've done a very good job. I appreciate having you on, and we'll be back next week for another amazing episode. Peace.
Cheers.